What's up, everyone? Tiger Stacker here. As stackers, you all want to get your gold how for the least amount possible. So you look for the bargains, for the white stuff, for the yellow stuff. You look to preserve your family by preserving your wealth. Some of you also look into another form of yellow, uranium. And some of you have stock in that to preserve your family and preserve your wealth. This video is a little different. This video is about preserving your family, but differently. But it is important for you and your family. We're going to talk about stashing a third yellow substance, sunlight. And I have for you a very special guest, one who will save you a lot of money, which is good for your family. I've been looking into this company for at least 3 years, and I plan to use them. And I found what I believe is the least expensive, most comprehensive company that will protect my family and yours. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to my guest. So I want to welcome Ben, who is the owner of Powered Portable Solar and Minutemen Prep YouTube channel. I've been watching Ben for a long time, and I've learned a lot. And I want you to learn everything from Ben because he understands energy and solar in ways that I don't. I love science, and I love physics. But the one physics that I'm the weakest at is electricity. So I'm going to go on and let Ben do a lot of the talking right now. Dad, before we get started,
Yeah,
are you a stacker?
I am. Mostly silver is my focus.
Very good. Most of us are. So the only yellow stuff you tend to stack more of is sunlight then.
Yeah, I do stack a lot of sunlight. Mostly off-grid focused is what I do. Mostly backup and off-grid, but getting into grid tie systems as well, just because so many people are already involved in that and need help with it.
That they do. So how did you get started in solar?
I definitely come from a preparedness background. Growing up, my whole family was into preparedness. And was it 2008? I went through Hurricane Ike in Houston, Texas when I lived there at the time. And it was about 2 weeks that our neighborhood didn't have power. But luckily, our family had a gas generator with enough gasoline stored up. But I literally remember being in our media room, and my dad had walked in and said, "Hey, I just poured in the last can of gasoline. After this, there's no more power." And fortunately, after about halfway through that tank was used, power came back from the grid, and many places were without power for even up to 4 weeks. And I just remember thinking there's got to be a better way to do this than to be so reliant on gasoline. And so I started looking at propane, natural gas. Those are viable options as well. But especially when I was living in Houston, even after a hurricane, the sun shines. The sun is very commonly out. And so I thought, what could I do to harness the sun, since it's basically a nuclear reactor going on? How could I harness that in order to have my own backup power? And that's what got me into solar generators or power stations. I know some people get upset about that term. But solar generators were just a simple solution to not have to understand solar. I didn't have to know programming or battery types or anything like that. I would just buy it, pull out of the box, I could turn it on, and I can run what I wanted. But what I noticed as I traveled to all these different expos and preparedness shows and so on, there were lots of companies advertising these different solar generators, but they would always say, yeah, I can run a chop saw and I can run your fridge and all these things. But as soon as I would ask for how long, that's where the issue always was. They would say, oh, well, you can run your refrigerator for 4 hours. I just thought, why would I spend $2,000 to run my fridge for 4 hours? So started down the rabbit hole of power stations, solar generators, to what systems can actually run all of my vital equipment for an extended period of time. And that was about 8 years ago, 7, 8 years ago when I first started that. So that's how I started Powered Portable Solar, and in conjunction with my Minuteman Prep YouTube channel. And so my focus with my website and my channel has been to help people understand what these systems can and cannot do. Because as soon as you get on the phone with a company, they're going to tell you that their system's the best and that it will, print gold and silver for you effectively, that it can do anything you want it to do. And that's just not the case. So solar's confusing as enough as it is. I wanted to help simplify it for people and help consult with them to make it easier. So I'm not loyal to a brand. I'm not bought out by anyone. I don't have any agreements with anyone that I have to promote certain products. I do the research. I use the stuff myself and share that information with everybody.
And I can attest to that because I've seen a lot of his videos where he's shot down products, and some of them tried to, give him some sort of promotion to speak good about them, and he said, "No, I'll review it and I'll give an honest opinion." And seen him shoot down some. In fact, one of the ones I want to point out that I first watched you was YouTube linked me to you because I was looking at a portable unit. Never bought it, but I looked at it from For Patriots. And
oh yeah, yeah. They've got incredible advertising. That's about all they're good at. Everything else I don't recommend.
Well, I do buy their food. But that's about all I buy is their, well, the little tiny solar units. So if you lose things, you can recharge your cell phone or something like that.
Right. Portable power brick is a little different. Yeah, their main solar generators I definitely don't recommend.
So let me ask you the next thing. What interests you about solar preparedness and other types of solar backup, or did you already answer that?
I might touch on that a little bit more. The biggest thing when I went through Hurricane Ike, and I've been through other disasters, but Hurricane Ike was a very eye-opening one for me. Within a couple of days, you could not get gasoline, and so the hard part of gasoline as a gas generator is that you're going to go through it pretty quick, because in most counties it's illegal to store a lot of it unless you've got like a huge 500-gallon tank, above ground tank, something like that. But what I'm talking about, what I'm talking about is gas cans. It's hard to store a lot of gas cans of gasoline. It spoils after a year, and it can cause a lot of gunking and issues within a generator itself. So I just wanted a solution that I could push a button, and as long as the sun's out, I can do everything. Especially if I'm away, I travel for work sometimes doing installations or whatever, trainings and so on. And I want my wife to be able to turn it on and not have to move around a 12,000 watt tri-fuel generator and figure out which fuel to connect up to and how to crank it on, all those things. I just want to be able to push a button and be ready to go. So that's why I focus so much on the solar. And I also just enjoy teaching, and solar is confusing. And so I think it's helpful to people to have someone like me who's just a normal guy learning how to use this stuff, share it along the way.
Well, I had a similar thing with the derecho, if you remember that, back in, I think it was 2012, kind of like a land hurricane, if you will.
Oh, uh-huh.
And it knocked out the power for a long time. I broke my family up into to units. Sent my son to go get a solar, a gas generator, which they were all sold out.
Yep.
Wife and I went to the only area I knew that there was electricity at, because I had dinner there the night before when the derecho came through. Bought tons of gas in gas tanks. Had to feed to a couple people. Got mad, telling them that I had to get this for the generator for medicine for the patients, which
Yeah.
was partially true. I was the patient. And then I went, because I'm a pilot, I went with my instructor because we went in a bigger plane that I wasn't ready to fly by myself. It was a Piper Saratoga. We flew from Charleston, West Virginia to Johnstown, Pennsylvania, where I had my other house. My generator up there was gunked up. So we went to Lowe's and bought a big one, brought it back home, started it up, and I was the only one who had power. Since then, I've put in a Generac generator, the biggest air-cooled unit. But I still worry about that because of what we're going through. We're going through risks right now of our currency going through the toilet. They want to get rid of fossil fuels, including natural gas. And if they get rid of that, then we lose that ability also. So I've seen your videos where, hold on a second here. Anyway, so where was that? So I've seen your videos where I've seen you show your Generac generator plus your solar plus what with the grid, and that you've actually had ways of integrating all three. So if you want to come off of one or come off the other and go to just one source, you can do that. Which I want to tell all of you watching this recording that if you do use Ben's resources, he can help you with all that, but we'll let him explain that here in a little bit. What guidance, services, and products do you offer?
So on my website, poweredportablesolar.com, I pretty much only list the products that I would personally use. If you go to my channel, Minuteman Prep, and you watch a bunch of my solar generator videos, you'll see that more often than not, I actually don't recommend the systems that I'm showing off. Or if I do recommend them, it'll be for a specific use case, such as like a van life or RV or just a refrigerator and a freezer. Try to figure out, what classification it would work in. So what I do is I do consulting, and consulting would consist of basically finding out exactly what your goal is, what your budget is, what your location is, and what system would work for you for the most affordable setup. So whether that's an Apollo setup or an EcoFlow or a Bluetti, doesn't matter the brand to me. For me, I'm just looking at what's the goal, what is the purpose and the thing we need to accomplish, and what system's going to do that, reach that goal at the best price. So the consulting part is a major part of what I do. And then as well as the kits and individual items, you can find those on poweredportablesolar.com. And you can choose from a pre-made kit, which gives you extra discounts. And it's going to come with the panels and the units and extra batteries and the wiring. It's going to be 100% complete. That's one of the biggest difficulties that people have with these solar setups, is knowing all the different parts that they need to get, and especially factoring things that they just don't know about, because you don't know what you don't know. And so even knowing if you should get a cart to wheel the device on or not, that's going to be a big deal that you may not consider beforehand. You may think, oh, it's fine, I can just put it on the shelf and be good. Then you come to realize you need to move it fairly often, and it becomes a problem, which is why the kits are helpful. Or if you just need to select specific items, then the individual items are listed as well. I also do installations, mostly off-grid is what I've focused on, off-grid and backup. But I do grid-connected systems as well. Even people who have solar on their house already but don't have batteries, they don't have power when the grid is out, even though they have solar panels. So there's a way to add batteries to those existing systems, or add a separate off-grid portable system. So whether it's consulting, product selection, and supply, as well as installations, that's pretty much all that I do with powered portable solar.
Now, when you said the batteries for what's already there, are you talking about portable units that are at someone's house, or are you talking about the ones that are stationary to their house, or both?
Stationary. So some people get solar The most common way people get solar is a door knocking company comes along, shows them why it's going to save them money, excuse me, and then they get solar. But 99% of the time, no exaggeration, they don't get a battery, and they're not made aware, the homeowner is not made aware that they will not have power when the grid is out, because you can't be making power from your panels and supplying power to the grid if the grid is down, because you may end up hurting a lineman who's working on the power lines to get it repaired and back up. So you will lose all power unless you have backup batteries. And that's the one thing that pretty much no door knocking company focuses on, because it increases the amount of time it takes for the permits to get approved, which means it increases the amount of time for the sales rep to get their commission, and the sales rep wants to get paid in the next 4 weeks on a massive deal. So they rarely ever talk about batteries. Whereas from my perspective, I won't do a system without batteries, because it's all about the backup and about the preparedness for me.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because what I've seen with your company, and you can confirm or refute if I've got this accurate or not, is that the stationary units I see, especially the ones that are advertising, calling you on the phone, knocking on your door, you don't get a whole lot of power, don't get a whole lot of service for a ton of money.
Right.
Seen them tell me I would get only maybe 40% of the power I need for my home,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm approaching $100,000.
Yep.
Where I've seen with your system, we could get to a whole house service. What, about $40,000-$60,000 when we last talked about this?
Yeah. Generally speaking, we're about 30 to 50% less than the average solar company for a fully functioning off-grid or grid-tied system. There is no such thing as a standard house. A lot of people say, well, I just got the standard things I want to run. But for example, in your home, you have a lot more electrical powered things as far as heat goes, whether it's cooking or water heater or so on. Whereas in my house, it's all propane. So my electrical use is far lower. Even though we're using the same things, we're both doing our laundry and taking hot showers, but how that heat gets there is very different. And so there's no such thing as a standard house. That's why it's so important to do the consultations and figure out for each person what's going to be the best setup. But I just did an install in Maryland where we saved the customer about $40,000 total to do the exact same system that a local company would do. And for my house, I got a quote to take it mostly off grid, but not like 100% full or guaranteed that even through storms would be okay. It was $107,000, and to make it 100% for sure good to go, it was going to be about $130,000 to install that same $130,000 system, including labor, everything like I would normally charge. It's about $60,000 or $70,000. So it's about half the price, and the system, you get all the same benefits. You still get the 30% tax credit. You still save on your electricity bill, and you have the backup. You have all of it. So some people just want backup to replace like a gas generator and run essentials, and that's a perfect place to start or a perfect place to focus on. But some people want to be completely off grid and stop paying a slowly inflating electricity bill. So we can do all of that.
And what's nice about it is he has different types of systems that can do different types of things. Mm-hmm. Whether you want something like a RV or you're not much of an electric user, or in my case, I want to get to a point where I'm 100% off grid, but the unit that we're looking at, my wife and I are looking at, you can buy in tranches and add it together until you get to the completeness that you want. And you can't do that with a stationary unit.
Correct. Well, so, technically you can, but it's going to be much more difficult to do that. Excuse me. With these power stations, now that they're big enough to run entire houses, you can buy a system big enough just to run your essentials, and then cover most of your bill, and then take you completely off grid. You can do that all over time. And because of the newest technology in batteries, batteries are easily going to last 30 years or more before they reach 80% efficiency. So they're still usable after that time. They're just not as efficient. Very similar to a car. It's not as efficient 20 years later as it was when it was brand new, but it's a very simple system to build upon, which is the beauty of it.
I like that idea about buying it in tranches.
Yeah.
And that way you don't have to get a big loan, then you don't have to pay the interest rate, because a lot of stackers are big against trying to decrease their interest rates, especially with the upcoming inflation and the currency and the problems we're having financially.
Mm-hmm.
Next question I have for you is, what guides do you recommend to learn about emergency preparedness in solar?
That's a tough one. As part of my Minuteman preparedness ideology that I have what I call the 12 pillars of emergency preparedness. I can just pull them up really quick. It really depends on where you are as far as how prepared you are at this time. Some people don't have water filtration yet. Some people don't have food storage yet. Some people don't have a rainy day fund yet. I mean, for stackers, you probably do. But in no particular order, you've got water, shelter, food, security, medical, power, fitness or health, communication, community, transportation, finances, and sanitation. All of those are different aspects that are really important to focus on. And many are, I would say some are more important than others, such as water, food, and shelter. Because if you don't have water, you're dead within a couple of days. If you don't have shelter, then you're subject to the elements, which can kill you in a couple of days. If you don't have food, you can go for a little while and you probably scavenge something, but you're not going to be operating at top levels. Same with fitness. A lot of preppers are very overweight, and I'm not huge on being a six-pack guy, but as long as you can do all the physical activities you need to do in an emergency preparedness, then great. But it is important to be fit. And then, of course, power, medical. All of these things have different importances for different people. So for me, I started first with water. I got a water filter that I knew would last me for decades, and then as well have extra filters for it so I can keep it lasting. Shelter, whether you're bugging in or bugging out. Most people, it's advised to bug in. Don't go to the mountains thinking that you're going to hunt deer and build a log cabin. It's just not feasible. Food. Most people have 2 to 4 weeks of food that they're eating regularly. But even just having rice, beans, canned chicken, canned beef, having those essential foods for long-term storage are important. So one of the things that I am working on is minutemanprep.com. I own the website, and I've started working on these 12 pillars. And what will the format of it's going to be, the 12 pillars will be right across the top. So if you've got a question on power, then I'll have that section, and then you'll see natural gas, propane, gasoline, solar. You'll see all the different options, and I go through all the different ways that you can use power for backup, or as well an alternator on a bicycle. Whatever it is, all these different methods. So that's something that's in the works right now that eventually will be a resource. But for now, it's more so looking at that list of 12 and looking at what are you weak in. If you're weak in transportation, if you don't have fuel for your vehicle or a bicycle that can get you from place to place, whatever it is, look at that and start researching just what your natural questions are. How do I get around when vehicles don't work? And therefore, you start finding those answers.
Very good. Now I have a Harley, and I have an electric car, which I'm hoping the Apollo. That's the unit I want to get for the house. That, by the way, from what Ben has told me, is way better than any of the stationary units. And if you're looking for total house coverage, talk to Ben about the Apollo unit. If you want things that won't give you 240, but they'll give you 120, there's other units there, but the Apollo, as far as I'm concerned, is what I'm shooting for. But one of the reasons is because I have a Mustang Mach E,
Nice.
and if I can have an ample amount of power through solar, I will never run out of power to run that vehicle.
Correct.
Ben is so full of knowledge that can help all of us. There will be a part 2, so please stay tuned. Tiger Stacker, out.